Matt, President Trump has completed this extraordinary trip to Malaysia, Japan, South Korea, and his summit with Xi Jinping, which he said was a 12 on a scale of 10. He's also put out a Truth Social saying we're going back to testing our nuclear weapons. I don't know what it means, whether that means underground testing or just testing of the vehicles. What did you make of the last week for Donald Trump?
That was a very successful trip to Asia, his first in his second term. I think what Trump is doing is showing that America can begin to prepare for a situation where we are at conflict, a kinetic conflict with China. And you prepare for that situation by strengthening your alliances with your Pacific friends. So that he had a wonderful trip to Japan, a wonderful trip to South Korea. He recently hosted the Australian Prime Minister in Washington. That was a good meeting. So he's solidifying ties with our friends. You also do it by decreasing your dependence on China for rare earths. So he made a variety of rare earth agreements with our allies. And he's also, of course, lessening regulations at home in order to develop our own minerals, of which America has a bountiful supply. It's only because of green regulations that we've constricted ourselves from competing with China in this domain. And he went finally to meet with President Xi Jinping, the Chinese dictator, and he came in and he said, look, those rare earth controls that China was threatening were so damaging to the world, not just to America, that we were prepared to levy an additional 100% tariff. And as a result of that threat, China has agreed not to impose these controls for a year. And we've had some other promises from China as well in terms of buying American agricultural products and working to clamp down on fentanyl. But with all such dealings and negotiations with the Chinese Communist Party, we have to look for compliance. We have to make sure that these are just not empty promises, but that the Chinese Communist Party actually acts on what it promised President Trump. And so I don't view this as a grand bargain. I see it as one further step in this ongoing competition between the United States and China to define the 21st century.
The good news is Taiwan was not mentioned by anyone. And the bad news is Jimmy Lai was not mentioned by anyone. Now, we would not expect them to do diplomacy about Taiwan in public. They might have talked about it in private. And dissidents were never released in a way that would embarrass, in the Soviet days, Solzhenitsyn and Sharansky, they were not released in ways that embarrassed the Kremlin. So I have to hope it comes to it. Do you think the soybean deal is a precursor of a Cold War, not unlike us selling the Russians wheat? Instead, this time China's buying our soybeans?
I think it's very similar. China was a big export market for our farmers. The farmers are an important constituency for President Trump. And so China quite consciously has reduced its purchases of American soybeans and other agricultural supplies in order to show that they have leverage in this struggle. And so their pledge to resume the purchases of American agricultural products is a win for President Trump. I am cautious, however, because I recall the Phase 1 trade deal in Donald Trump's first term, which was agreed to toward the end of 2019. The Chinese there also made pledges to buy U.S. agricultural products. And of course, within a few months, we had the COVID, the CCP's cover-up of COVID, and an economic standstill globally, and China never delivered on its promises. So I think President Trump, of course, remembers that well, too. And I think what we'll see is, in the coming weeks, this isn't really over. It's going to be a constant back and forth between the two powers. And President Trump even said, look, he's planning on visiting China in April of 2026. And so that's kind of the next milestone here in the ongoing relationship. But I will say I think President Trump deserves credit. He's the person who put the People's Republic of China on the political map as a power that is not just a responsible stakeholder, as presidents of both parties characterized it as in the past, but as an actual competitor and threat to the United States. He did that in 2015, and he's followed up on it. And some of his methods are not the favored methods of the political class here in D.C. Tariffs, these new kind of investments our government is making in critical industries and critical minerals and other commodities. They just signed a deal for nuclear reactors with Westinghouse, an investment by the federal government. That's not liked by the political class, but I see it as part of an overall strategy, Hugh, to get the American government in a position where, should we go to war with China, China can't cut us off and thus end the war on their terms immediately.
Yeah, if you want to prevent war, prepare for peace. Oldest saying in the book. But you lead me to my exit question, and I always disclose to the audience I own Palantir. I don't own NVIDIA. NVIDIA and the Blackwell chip teamed up with Palantir in one of the more amazing displays I've ever seen on a technology platform. Do you think we're winning the AI race the way that NVIDIA's CEO says we are, and Palantir is the ubiquitous software of the future?
I think that AI is one of the domains where we continue to have an edge over China. I think Jensen Huang is absolutely correct about that. And so it's important for us to maintain that edge. We have to think about how can we continue to out-innovate China. There are other domains where the Chinese have raced ahead of us. Electric vehicles, for example, batteries. I think the next domain where we're going to be fighting for prestige is robotics, where the Chinese have made great leaps. So when we're having this type of competition, we need to think about what are America's advantages. Well, one advantage we have is our military and our military technology, our nuclear arsenal. That's why it was very important for President Trump to announce that we would resume testing of our nuclear arsenal as a reminder to the world, and our AI advantage. And we need to do everything to press our advantages as we prepare for a potential conflict in order to avoid conflict.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.